And I'll introduce you, Anne Marie.
Okay.
Let me make sure I don't know if somebody can check. It looks like it's working or setting up anyways.
It is being live streamed.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, welcome everybody to Project Civica's Thursday statewide team meeting. Tonight we are going to talk about freedom of information laws or sunshine laws. Uh, there may be a few people here from other states, so this will be New York focus, but keep in mind that no matter where you go in the United States, pretty much, I believe every state has some version of a freedom of information law, sunshine law. Yours may be a little different, but this will give you a general idea of what it's used for and some of some, at least for New York, the deadlines. Please check your own state for that information directly so that you don't, make any mistakes or anything. But I would like to introduce Anne Marie. She is an expert in freedom of information law, and she has been helping Project Civica and actually Smart Elections in some of the different issues that we've been dealing with in New York State. She is a wonderful person, first off, and super knowledgeable, super helpful. And I think you will get a lot out of this presentation. She is like me from upstate New York, so we are having bad weather here, but we do have a contingency plan if something happens with the internet. So just so everybody knows, just be patient if something happens. So Anne Marie, why don't you jump in here and say hello to everybody and welcome to our Project Civica.
Well, thanks, Kim and Danielle, for having me. As you know, as you stated, I have 20 plus years experience in FOIL. I'm an active FOILer myself. I handle a lot of appeals as well as recently working with some of your people, Kim and Danielle, on two lawsuits, Article 78 Pro Se. One of them we'll be discussing tonight in the presentation. So I've spoken with Royal Reynolds. He did a lawsuit, Article 78 lawsuit in Monroe County on FOIL. So I thought this would be a perfect time to kind of introduce his lawsuit and how he ended up getting to the lawsuit. So I want people to see what happens after, not necessarily what happens after the appeal, but how you end up getting to the appeal, how to structure everything so that when you then do your Article 78, it's much easier. So do you want me to go ahead and get started?
Absolutely. Why don't you share a
Okay.
screen? You should be able to. And
And if everyone can just either put your questions in the chat for after the training, because it's a long training. I've included FOIL requests and FOIL appeals, and I've combined them. So it's about an hour training. Um, and if you have questions after the fact that maybe came up later, send them to Kim, and I'll make sure she gets the answers to give everybody. Plus, you'll also get the presentation. So she already has it, and she can send that to anyone who would like it. Now I just got to find my presentation.
Just so everyone knows, this is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube and through projectcivica.org. It'll be on the website also.
Just give me a minute because he has this little box that likes to pop up and down, and I got to get it to pull back down and get rid of it. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this as a FOIL slideshow. If anyone cannot see the slideshow when it comes up, let me know and I'll go back to the regular presentation. Just give me 1 second here.
I wanted to say too, we have Sue here as well, who was involved in doing a whole bunch of foiling with her Article 78 pro se lawsuit too. So knowing how to foil is, instrumental in many, many ways.
Okay, can everyone see the screen? It says Freedom of Information Law, New York State.
Yep.
Okay.
We're also seeing the next slide, so I think there might be another view.
It could be the view you're looking at.
Okay.
So you might have it in a different format. So you would have to go and change your view as how you're seeing it.
Okay.
But for me, all I see is the presentation.
No, we see your notes also on the side.
Okay, so you're not getting it then in slideshow, which
That's
is just seeing, okay. Let me then switch back to that and I'll see it in the same view that all of you are seeing in it. Well, maybe not because it's not letting me back. There we go. Okay, so this is, you're probably seeing it with people on the right side and then my notes and so forth. So let me see about increasing this a little because it's a lot larger in slideshow. Of course, I don't know how to do it. Oh, yes, I do. Because some of this information might be a little bit too small. Just let me know if you guys have any problems seeing it. Just because I took documents and I embedded them into the presentation from the lawsuit. So some of them might not have come out so clear. So I will start anyways. Oh,
I
and
think
mine
you're good
is,
now. I think you're good.
okay, hold on one second because I can't see it. It's too large.
The best laid plans
You
here.
know, you can't win. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see this.
Yes.
Okay. So I just quickly go over when I start my foil, when I start any foil training is to encourage people to know the difference between foil versus FOIA. So FOIL is the Freedom of Information Law in New York State, okay? It's the term used when requesting public records in New York State from local, county, and state agencies. But each state may have different FOIL requirements, as Kim alluded to earlier. FOIA, though, is the Freedom of Information Act. It is a formal request to a U.S. federal agency for access to federal records. And I put the link in here, it's foia.gov. But I also learned recently through Smart Elections that Arkansas calls their FOIL FOIA. That's because they combine their Freedom of Information law, their open meetings law, and their open government law into one act. But FOIA, for the most part, is U.S. federal records. Okay. Who must comply with FOIL? Well, New York's Freedom of Information law requires all state and local government entities to provide public access to their records. But who are they? State, county, city, town, and village departments and agencies, public authorities and public corporations, such as like an IDA, school districts, public libraries, volunteer fire companies. Now, I know some volunteer fire companies are 501c3 not-for-profits, but if their money is derived off your municipality's tax levy, um, then they are foilable. And other governmental bodies performing public functions. Judiciary, such as the courts, their administrative records are foilable, but their records of their legal case are not foilable, other than under certain exceptions. But if you know NYSEF, NYSEF, is the New York State Courts electronic filing system, you can go online and look up these cases, but not all cases are online. Now, not-for-profit corporations in New York, they aren't subject to FOIL because they aren't governmental agencies, but they can be covered if they have significant government control, perform essential public functions, or manage records for a government agency, making it a case-by-case determination based on their function and relationship with the government. And the POL Article 6, Section 86, that's actually public officers law. And that's what FOIL is, public officers law. Who receives your FOIL request? Well, the designated official handling records requests under the Freedom of Information Law FOIL is called a FOIL officer or a records access officer, but they are pretty much the same position. The FOIL officer in a municipality is normally the town, village, or city clerk. Each agency must appoint at least one FOIL officer, though I have seen municipalities, they have 20, 30 FOIL officers. And it could be they appoint one to each department. A FOIL officer, though, cannot also hold the position of a FOIL appeals officer. That's because if you put in a FOIL request and the FOIL officer denies it, there's no sense appealing because the same person's going to deny it again. So they have to be different people. Now, how to submit a FOIL request? Well, the first thing you want to do is identify the correct agency. So you want to review their website, okay? And just to see what their procedure is. You need to make your request in writing. FOIL requires a written request, no verbal ones. So be as specific as possible, describe the records, example dates, subjects, names, document types. But agencies aren't required to create new records or answer questions. Include your contact information for follow-up, such as your email address, preferred for paper trail, which you'll see as we go on why that's so important, or your phone number. How to submit a FOIL request, continued. Choose a submission method. So there are different methods that may be available to you. Most agencies accept multiple options, but they are required to accept email if they have reasonable means. And I would assume they have a computer and access to the internet. Online portals. Many agencies use GovQA or another online submission platform. GovQA is primarily state agencies. So pretty much you fill the information online, you hit the button, and it automatically submits to them. But there are also agency-specific online forms. Forms that you have to print, fill out, scan in, and are emailed to the agency. I found that with the city of Dunkirk, they do not have an online submission, just the form. They require you to print it, fill it out, scan it back. But if you have a printer issue and you can't do that, I just called them and said, I want your email because I don't have access. And they gave me their email. So, and then the other option is email. You can also do it US mail, which is snail mail, or in person. For New York City agencies, you use the centralized open records portal. And then also check for existing public records first. Why FOIL for a record that is already available online? So many documents such as reports, data, policies are already online via agency websites, Open New York, Open Book New York, and other portals or online databases where no FOIL is needed. So I try to first see if I can get the record online before I have to FOIL for it. FOIL has time limits, and those time limits are for putting the FOIL request. Those time limits are not time limits against you, it's time limits for the agencies. So it's very good to know what those limits are. So we're going to start out with an acknowledgement. So once you submit a FOIL request, they must acknowledge you within 5 business days of receipt. Okay? Now, let me point out, if you do an online submission and you get a receipt, that is not your acknowledgement. They still have 5 business days from receipt to acknowledge you. That's just telling you they got it. Okay, it's no difference if you send it certified mail and the date they sign is the date of receipt. The FOIL officer has a few options when responding to your request at this stage. So in simple terms, they can approve the request and just give you the records. Now, I'm sure we've all had that issue where we didn't get the records right away. Deny the request, but if they do, they have to explain why in writing and point to the specific legal exemption per the FOIL law that allows them to withhold the information. There are only certain allowed reasons, also known as exemptions, to deny records, other than the records don't exist or they don't have the records. They can also at this time ask for more time. So say they need time to review the records or find the records. They can take an extra 20 business days if needed, but they must provide a reason. They can't just say, oh, we're going to need 20 more business days. They can say, we have to search out the records and review them, and we need more time. They can give you a firm, specific date. when the records will be provided, and this is called a date certain. But this date has to be reasonable based on the situation, like how many documents there are or how hard they are to find or review. They can't just extend without a good reason. Now, this is just for the acknowledgement, okay? And I want to note there are time limits are based on business days, not including holidays or weekends. Well, how would you know what their holiday schedule is? Well, for most New York State agencies, the primary official source is from the Office of Employee Relations and the Department of Civil Service. The 2026 legal holidays calendar, I put the link in, and I can tell you when they update that for the next year, they don't change the link. So, and you can also check the agency's website. So now they've put out their acknowledgement 20 days and they write back to you, oh, we're going to need more time. Well, they can ask for that. When the initial 20 business day extension ends, the FOIL officer can provide the records, deny the records in whole or in part. If more time is needed, they can extend the time frame. If they extend the time frame, they must provide a reasonable reason for the delay and a date certain when the records will be provided or denied. So when they're going to respond to you. It's not like, let's keep extending it 20 business days. They can't do that. They've already had 20. They should have already determined at 20 days how much longer they need. If it's a large volume and they say 3 months, that might not be considered unreasonable depending on the time frame you requested. If you requested 5 years of minutes, it could very well take that long. So just be cognizant of what you're requesting in the FOIL and the time frame that you can estimate that it could take to get those records to you. Is there a cost for public records? There is and there isn't. If you request your records via email to be sent back via email, there may be no cost, but there could be. It all depends on what type of records you're requesting. Now, the first structure, and these structures can't be combined, is just the paper copy. I want a paper copy, and it's between 8.5 by 11 up to 9 by 14 inch paper, and it'll be 25 cents a page. Now, if some documents are two-sided, I would definitely ask them if copying two-sided would be 50 cents or will that be a quarter? Because that does make a difference. The second structure is the actual cost of reproduction for all other records. The first one is the 2-hour rule. So, say you requested correspondence between a village board and 3 different other agencies, okay? And they approved it, but it is, we'll say, 25,000 documents, 25,000 pages of documents, because you asked for a large volume. You asked for the last 4 years, okay? And this is not just the stuff going to your village mayor. It's also all the stuff that is that's going out and coming back. So think about that, okay? So the 2-hour rule is saying if it's going to take longer than 2 hours to scan the records into the system to email you, they can start charging you after 2 hours. But they can only charge you based on the lowest paid employee that can do the job. I have seen that a few times. It's very rare. Cost of electronic storage device. So, say you foiled for body cam footage. Well, they're not going to email that to you. So they can offer it to you on a thumb drive, a disc, a CD, and they can charge you for that. They don't have to accept your thumb drive or your disc. They will provide it to you, and it should be at their cost, their actual cost. And then there's the cost of having a copy made by a third-party vendor. And I give an example of blueprints. I've actually did do this, foiled for blueprints. I've also actually foiled for a zoning map. Zoning maps are huge. And they can send that out to a third-party vendor if they don't have the capability to copy that that size of a document. But guess what? They can charge you all this up front. They can ask for payment before they move forward, and that's legal. But what they can't charge you for is their search or review time. So I'm going to address a little bit of, again, the additional information on costs, because a lot of people do have questions on this. So payment may be required in advance, but should not be paid until the request is approved. I did have one of these. I helped someone foil for a body cam footage, and they charged, and they didn't say it was approved. So, we got them to approve it, because what's the point in paying for something that they didn't approve yet? Agencies must notify you in advance of any estimated fees or costs. Example, more than 2 hours of time is needed. Now, you have a right to know what this cost includes. Example, how many pages of records? They can't just charge you, $130 and not tell you exactly what that's for. And is it for one-sided or two-sided? Total number of pages. There is no fee for electronic copies if records are already maintained electronically and can be provided without significant effort. And then fees can be waived in whole or part at the agency's discretion, which I think this would be something very interesting for Project Civica or any other organization that might be listening in. So common reasons agencies may choose to waive fees. So while the statute and regulations don't mandate waivers or list required criteria like federal FOIA, which has a public interest test, agencies often waive or reduce fees for practical, policy, or equity-based reasons, including minimal or low cost. You asked for the minutes and it was 1 page and the fee is small. So instead of collecting the 25 cents and writing up the receipt and everything, they just give it to you. Public interest or benefit. Some agency may waive fees when disclosure promotes transparency, informs the public about government operations, or serves a broader societal good. Example, journalism, nonprofit research, or community issues. Agencies sometimes exercise discretion for requesters facing financial barriers. Just so you know, when I foiled the city of Dunkirk, they did waive my fees for copies, even though I requested via email because they required me to pick them up. But they waived that for me. So nice of them. Voluminous but low effort requests. These are low volume, doesn't require a lot of effort on the FOIL officer, or when the agency wants to avoid disputes over small fees. So you can include a polite request for a fee waiver or reduction in your initial FOIL submission explaining why, example, the disclosure would contribute to public understanding of the topic and the cost would be a hardship. So you can always try that. I can tell you, I actually did that years ago. This is probably back in the early 2000s, because I was taking all the records that I received from FOIL from my school district and I was making them public. And I felt it was good that the public understood the records I was obtaining, because they weren't, until I FOILed for them, they were not readily available to the public. Okay, now we're going to get into exemptions. What can they exempt and why? Okay, so exemptions allow an agency to deny access to records or portions thereof that are specifically exempted from disclosure by state or federal statute. An example of an exemption under that, for that disclosure would be Social Security numbers. I've had actually documents where it specifically showed what was they stated what was redacted and under what statute. And they have to do this for each redaction, not just one redaction. If they redacted several things on the document, I have a right to know what they redacted and for what reason. then if disclosed would constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. So an example would be a list of all licensed drivers in a specific county, including their names, home addresses, and dates of birth. An agency may deny because disclosing home addresses and birth dates without a compelling public purpose would likely be deemed an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. But I quote, I would state maybe, because they might already be doing it, you know. And if you got someone put in a foil and you put in the same foil and one got denied and one didn't, to me, the person that got denied could appeal on the fact that the other person wasn't denied, that they were being selective on their exemptions. So if disclosed would impair present or imminent contract awards or collective bargaining negotiations. So example, you requested detailed bid proposals before a contract has been awarded. An agency may deny access to these records because releasing the bids could reveal proprietary pricing strategies or trade secrets, giving competing firms an unfair advantage in impairing the ongoing contract award process. And that did occur when I helped someone foil records from the Dormitory Authority of the state of New York, who handles a majority of the grants for the state. And they would not release, even though they had already awarded the thing, they were in negotiations on the contract itself. Are trade secrets or are submitted to an agency by a commercial enterprise or derived from information obtained from a commercial enterprise in which, if disclosed, would cause substantial injury to the competitive position of the subject enterprise. Now, though this one is it's not like a normal exemption that I've seen. I have come across it a few times, especially one recently regarding the inputting of solar panels, or I'm sorry, wind turbines. It came up, and there was a specific thing regarding a trade secret. Um, in my opinion, it definitely could have appealed, and they probably would have won, but they weren't ready to pursue it yet, the other party. But the example would be records detailing financial projections and proprietary marketing strategies submitted by a technology company as part of an application for a state grant or tax incentive program. This exemption protects sensitive commercial information that could harm a business's competitive standing if made public. Now, one of the things I do know about this is that if a company states this is a trade secret, it's not enough for them to just state it's a trade secret. They have to prove it's a trade secret. They have to provide detailed information to the agency to get that trade secret protection. So another reason there could be an exemption that the information is compiled for law enforcement purposes, but only to the extent that the disclosure would interfere with law enforcement investigations or judicial proceedings, deprive a person of a right to a fair trial or impartial adjudication, identify a confidential source or disclose confidential information relating to a criminal investigation, or reveal criminal investigative techniques or procedures other than normal routine techniques and procedures. So an example would be you're requesting records of witness statements from an ongoing murder case. The agency denies the request because releasing the statements could tip off suspects or discourage witnesses interfering with the investigation. This protects active law enforcement efforts. Another exemption would be if disclosed could endanger the life or safety of any person. So you decide you want the records for the home addresses of undercover police officers. The agency denies the request because releasing this information could expose the officers to harm from criminals they are investigating, endangering their lives or safety. I'm sure in this day and age, most addresses are available online, but you never know. So this other one, this exemption, I think is a no-brainer. It really doesn't even really need an example. They can exempt the records that are examination questions or answers, which are requested prior to the final administration of such questions. And I think all of us as high school students, if we could have got the regional exam questions and answers before the actual test occurred, you know, that's exactly what this means. You just can't get the records until after the test is administered. So also, if disclosed, would jeopardize the capacity of an agency or an entity that has shared information with an agency to guarantee the security of its information technology assets. Such assets encompassing both electronic information systems and infrastructures. It's a big mouthful. Um, Example, requesting documents outlining the specific security vulnerabilities of a state agency's computer network. The agency denies because releasing the records would provide a roadmap for potential attackers, exposing the agency's systems to cyber attacks and compromising the security of sensitive data. And guess what? We are now to FOIL appeals. So if you want, I can take a few questions here. And this is just on FOIL requesting. This is not on where you go once you're denied and so forth.
Patrick?
Yeah, one quick question, Amory. You talked about public corporations that we can foil. And what immediately came to my mind was the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So that's a place we could foil.
Just because it has the word public in its name, I would not just automatically assume it's foilable. First, I would look to see what type of corporation it is.
Okay.
My first place to look would be the New York State Department of State Corporation lookup. You can just go to Google it. You'll see I have a link for it in my resources. So I would first look up the name of it and see what type of corporation it is.
Okay.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, public, and I could be wrong, because I've looked up IDAs and stuff. But you can go to their websites, and normally at the bottom of the page or in their about section, they talk about what type of organization or corporation they are. So there's a lot of different ways to find information on them first. So, and most of the, like, even like the IDAs where someone didn't know they were foilable, I just read through their annual report and found out that they addressed foil and the records were foilable. So I knew they were foilable.
Right.
So there's different ways to find out. But the first place I normally start, well, I look at their website and then I go to New York State corporation lookup.
Okay.
And
Now,
I'll search for it as a corporation, an LLC. I think there's like 4 of them: limited liability, partnership, and another one. And also too, the big thing is knowing what their real name is.
mhm.
I've
Yeah,
seen
right,
a lot
right,
of organizations that put up their real name on an organization website, and that's not their name,
right,
you
right.
know. So, but that's one way. And also too, if you find out they're like a not-for-profit corporation, that's a big company.
Right.
You can look up their 990 forms. If they're a not-for-profit, most likely they're a 501c3, 501c4. Most likely they file a 990 with the IRS. You could go to sites like ProPublica, type in their name, and voila, there's all their tax forms.
Now, IDA is what again?
Industrial development.
And that's an
That's the one that
agency.
gives the tax breaks to the
Okay.
corporations that want to come in and develop here or put in a business here. They'll give them pilots or tax breaks for like 10 years. Sometimes it's mortgage tax or sales tax. There's different things. There's an energy break and so forth.
Uh-huh.
and they have annual reports. So I've been in there, and when I've done research for people on different FOIL requests where they're having problems finding stuff, I'll go through the company's website.
Okay.
I mean, literally go through it, read everything, and then I report back what I found.
Okay. Now, one more quick question is, like, I'm always concerned, at least wondering about agencies that receive government funds. Like, some of these colleges receive federal grants and stuff like that. And, just off the top of my head, Stony Brook University. Is if it were possible to foil, let's say, uh, the University of Stony Brook, um, because is it possible?
So you want to see what type of grants they get, how
Uh-huh.
much money, what it's for. I would go to Open Book New York
Uh-huh.
first. Open Book New York, you can go under government contracts.
Uh-huh.
I believe it's government contracts, and you can search by name.
Okay.
And then I would just put in is it State University of New York at Stony Brook?
Uh-huh.
That's what I would put in. Try different versions of it, just trying Stony Brook or
Uh-huh.
SUNY at Stony Brook, stuff like that. Um, but they're an actual, like, I believe universities or state agencies.
Right.
Okay, or they're a type of agency or whatever. They're like not a school district, but similar. Um, but I've done research on University of Buffalo,
Okay.
and I've also done research on the University of Buffalo's foundation, and found out that the foundation was foilable. And also I'll get into other things in here of other resources that I use to find out if someone is foilable, if their records are foilable, or where I can look maybe to see if someone else foiled for them and already get the records and not have to foil for them at all.
All right. Right. Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Any
Right.
other questions?
Thanks.
Okay, so now we're going to get to FOIL appeals. So normally I just do FOIL requests and FOIL basics, and then I do appeals on a separate, but I've combined them for this training. So when and how to appeal, that's really a difficult thing. It's hard enough to describe your records on a FOIL request when you don't know the record, what the record is, and you can just reasonably describe it. But how do you know when to appeal? How do you know when they violated FOIL and so forth? So that's what we're going to discuss now. So constructive denial. This is in my opinion, this is the biggest reason people should be appealing, okay, is a constructive denial, but it's knowing when you've been constructively denied. So constructive denial occurs when an agency fails to respond properly within the required timeframes of FOIL, effectively treating the request as denied without issuing a formal written denial. So I've given some examples of where I've seen constructive denials. The first is they did no response to your initial FOIL requests. They didn't acknowledge you. They didn't acknowledge within 5 business days after receipt. They just ignored you. That's a constructive denial. They didn't have to actually deny you, or just them ignoring you is a denial. And you can just appeal. No waiting till they respond, just go ahead and appeal. Acknowledgement letter request 20 business days. But after 20 business days, they didn't respond to you. You're still waiting. Don't wait. 21st day, appeal. They've already violated the time limit. Acknowledgement letter doesn't state when they will respond. So, example, I'll get back to you. No, that's not sufficient. They either tell you I'm still searching and reviewing the records, I need an additional 20 business days. No, if they just say I'll get back to you, I might go back to them and say, well, what does that mean? That's not in line with FOIL. And if they don't respond, then I just appeal. And it's their problem because they didn't follow the time limits of FOIL. The acknowledgement letter asks for more than 20 business days. Oh, and the BDS equals business days, I just abbreviated. but it asks for more than 20 business days. So an example, we will respond in 120 days. Okay. In my case, what I would do is I would wait what is allowed, which is the 20 business days. And on the 21st business day, if they have not responded, I will appeal. Okay, because it's unreasonable for them just to put it out 120 days when the law is specific to say you can ask for 20 business days upon acknowledgement. Then there's the extension letter. Now, an extension letter would be after the acknowledgement, the 20 business days. Now it's an extension letter. Now they want to extend it further. The extension letter requests another 20 business days. Nope. They fail to give a date certain and reasonable explanation for the delay, because at this point, you can't ask for 20 business days. You need to give me a date certain. You already had your 20 business days. Okay? An extension letter provides a reason for the delay, but no date certain when the records will be provided or denied. Okay? Then you can appeal. Because you have no idea when they're going to get back to you. Could it be a month? Could it be 2 months? I know people that have been waiting 5 years to get their records. Of course, I wouldn't have waited that long, but if they don't provide a date certain when they're going to get back to you, and they just said that they need, they're going to be delayed in responding, then go ahead and appeal. It's a constructive denial. So some other ones, a blanket denial or redacted records. So a blanket denial refers to an agency's improper review of records without providing a particularized and specific justification for each withheld document or portion thereof. So I'll give you an example of blanket denial. You request, it really doesn't matter. You request these documents. You request certain records, and there's 50 pages to the records. And they look at one record, one of the pages, and like, wow, we can't release all this information. So they just assume, instead of reading each document, they just do a blanket denial. It's like with the stroke of a brush, and everything is denied. That's a blanket denial. The courts don't really like it when you do a blanket denial because they believe you should have to read the records and only exempt the portions that you're allowed to and provide the rest of the information. Redacted records, the government agency has blacked out, deleted, or otherwise obscured specific portions of the document or electronic file before releasing it to you. It's the same thing as a denial. If they redact the record, each thing they redact is a denial of that information. So agencies are generally required to redact only the exempt portions and release the remaining non-exempt material, rather than withholding the entire record, except in limited cases, such as when a separate statute mandates a total withholding, or for certain privacy concerns where redaction alone wouldn't suffice. The agency must provide a detailed written explanation of the specific exemptions justifying each redaction. And you have a right to know what they're redacting. Why? Because how do you appeal something you don't know what it is? I mean, if they redacted, we'll say, the person's name, and they were required to, that was not part of the exemption, you have a right to appeal that to get that information released. But how would you do that if you didn't know what was actually redacted? So it's not just telling you under what exemption, but what they're actually redacting. So another thing I added to this presentation is when to reopen a FOIL request prior to an appeal. When would you want to reopen your FOIL request? And I've run into all of the things on this page here. So the first one is the partial denial of records. So only a portion of the records requested were provided. They didn't give me an answer as to why they didn't give me the rest of the records. So I would want to, if possible, go back to the FOIL officer and ask them to reopen my FOIL request and provide those records. That'll save you some time because when you get to appeals, it's, they have 10 business days to respond. You might save yourself that trouble if that FOIL officer gives you the records. So the records are provided but are missing pages. So an example is you filed for a contract, it has 10 pages and the odd number pages are missing. Could be a simple mistake such as there were two-sided documents and the person when they scanned them in didn't realize that. So asked them to reopen the FOIL and provide those. Records provided as an attachment, but you can't open the attachment due to the file format or extension. You can contact them and say, I can't open this. I don't know if it's a broken link or what the issue is. Can you send it back to me in a PDF? Records provided through a web link, and all the records are not on the web page or the web link is broken. So an example is the web page has minutes of monthly meetings. So they give you this web page. It says a link. It has the minutes of a monthly meetings and you ask for the whole year, but they're only going to give you, they're missing April and September because there's no minutes. I would go back to them. Either provide me, an email copy of those minutes or don't, and I can appeal. If the records are provided, but attachments noted in the document are not provided, when they're giving you a document that says, see attachment, see policy, you're entitled to that. It's part of the record. So the documents provided states there's a contract attached, but is not part of records received. Go back and ask for it. Don't just leave it to chance. Go back and get it. So first ask FOIL officer via email to reopen the closed FOIL request to address the problem. If no response or FOIL request is denied to reopen, then you can go ahead and proceed with the FOIL appeal. Now, if they decide they're going to open it and they're going to give you the records, but you still realize they didn't give you all the records and now they don't want to really deal with you anymore, and they deny the rest or they close the FOIL, that's when the clock starts ticking for the 30 days you have to file a FOIL appeal. It's when you get that final denial or when they say the FOIL is closed. Then you know your time clock has begun. So this one is a very interesting one. It's really reading and understanding the law. It's a denial reason doesn't match the statute. So does the section of the law provided match the reason for denial? So examples, records were denied per New York State FOIL section 86.4, and the reason being due to confidentiality. This actually happened in a FOIL request I did. They said I really didn't ask for a record. So section 86.4 addresses what constitutes a record. Okay, but they denied for confidentiality also. But that is not reflective of the denial reason of confidentiality. They're two different things. One is what constitutes a record and the other is confidentiality. And I eventually did appeal this and I did get the records. You just got to know what the law is. And they don't always know the law when they're responding. They're putting up codes or whatever, section this, section that, and don't realize it doesn't match the reason they gave to deny you. So if you can find something as simple that, you may get the records. In my case, I did, and mine was the New York State Division of Budget. Okay, FOIL appeal time limits, because there's time limits whether it's a FOIL request or an appeal. But in this case, this is for both parties, both the person appealing and the person responding. So you have 30 calendar days to file a FOIL appeal. The first day begins on the date your FOIL request was denied. Now, if it wasn't denied and it was just closed and you feel the records were denied, it still starts that date. So the example would be we're denied on Friday, January 24th, 2025. Then your first day begins on the same date. And it's 30 calendar days, not business days. Now, if you're filing a FOIL appeal for constructive denial, there is no time limit to file a FOIL appeal. Why? Because they violated the time limits. When would you consider it being denied? I guess you could on an acknowledgement saying on the 5th business day that they didn't reply. But if you're on their 10th business day and you're still waiting, when would the denial date begin? So I put an example. You have received an acknowledgement stating that the agency needs 20 business days and will reply. 22 business days later, you have not received a response. Then proceed with a FOIL appeal. Why wait? But I caution people, if you receive a response from the FOIL officer prior to filing the FOIL appeal, then do not send the FOIL appeal. Why? Because time and time again, I have seen the appeal officer saying, it was untimely as you were already responded to. It's moot, you were already responded to. So make sure that, if you're heading to the post office to send it certified mail because you want a return receipt, knowing when they got it, that you check your email before you go and make sure they didn't respond. If they haven't responded, go ahead and email it or go ahead and mail it. Now, you have 30 calendar days to file a FOIL appeal after a reopening and reclosure of FOIL request, which I already stated. But that's only when the FOIL officer agrees to reopen the FOIL request and then has to close it. The FOIL appeals officer must respond to you within 10 business days of the receipt of a FOIL appeal. Add 3 business days if sent by U.S. mail. Why I do that? Because I know it takes in my area, by the time it's all rerouted, it takes 3 business days to get to their office, also known as snail mail. Or you can send this via certified mail requesting a signature, and then this way you'll know exactly the date they received it, and that starts the 10 business days they have to reply. So what you need to do a FOIL appeal, you'll want to know what the agency's FOIL procedure is. So it may be available online. If not, you're going to want to check the FOIL denial letter if you got a denial and see if it's on there. Check the agency website or call or email the FOIL officer. When you do, you want to know their FOIL appeal procedure, if it's online, or what it is, the FOIL appeal officer's name, title, email address, and or full mailing address. And I would say about 90% maybe of FOIL appeals are sent via U.S. mail. There are some agencies that allow you to appeal via email, but they're very few and far between. The majority of them want you to mail it to them. I wish this would change, but it hasn't changed yet in the law. So what other documents should accompany the signed FOIL appeal letter? So in your appeal, you're going to include the original FOIL request, the acknowledgement letter, all extension letters, all other correspondence between you and the FOIL officer. If you would like to get an advisory opinion from the New York State Committee on Open Government, you can request one. They are now responding within 24 to 48 hours, and they've been very good. I've been getting mine within like 12 hours. And you can also, if it's favorable to you, you can also put it as part of your appeal. And a FOIL officer certification letter. So there are different types of certifications. You can request a certification when you originally FOIL. You can request it after you FOIL. You can request it while you're appealing. You can request it after you appeal, but it goes to the FOIL officer. And you can ask for a certification of a true copy. You can ask the officer to certify that the copy that you received is a true and correct copy of the original record maintained by the agency. You can also ask them to certify that there were no other records, or that there were no records after a diligent search. So if the agency determines that it does not possess the requested records or cannot locate them after a diligent search, it must certify in writing that A, the agency is not the custodian of such records, or B, the records cannot be found after a diligent search. And it's just an email to the FOIL officer. I would provide my original FOIL request so she knows what she's certifying to, or if she sent me a denial, just so she knows what the certification is about. And then she should email you back. So one of the sites that I use, and I use this all the time, constantly, is the New York State Committee on Open Government. Now, they're a committee under the New York State Department of State, and they are tasked with interpreting FOIL, open meetings law. That's all they do is Freedom of Information law and open meetings law. On this website, you can find the text of the FOIL law. You can find the regulations, which, by the way, they create the regulations. They're 21 NYCRR. They also have legal cases on FOIL. They have advisory opinions. So they put out legal advisory opinions addressing people's questions regarding FOIL issues. And a lot of them are very helpful when you're doing an appeal. So, first thing I do is I search the Freedom of Information law for support of why the records were wrongfully denied, or why they could not something supporting constructive denial regarding the time limits. Then I'll go into the FOIL regulations. They're all on the same site. Search the FOIL regulations and find out if they address how they must proceed when addressing the actual law. It's almost like a policy and procedure. Then you want to search for an advisory opinion. And what's great is you can search by the words you're looking for, or you can actually search by the subject. So say it's regarding, I don't know, there's so many things on there. We'll say minutes. Okay, they will have numbers for all the advisory opinions that are current and relevant, and you just click on one of the numbers they have, and you read it to see, okay, is there information in here that supports my appeal? Okay, and you'll see one later on where I show you how we put it together. So you can request the advisory opinion specific to your case by emailing the committee with the FOIL request, denial, and your questions. And that would be a coog@dos.ny.gov. So you'll see throughout, I call it New York State Coog, and that's for the Committee on Open Government. You can also search for a legal case summary that supports your FOIL appeal. I found this very useful. Even though it's just a summary, it gives me the name of the case and a gist of what why it had to do with FOIL, and then I'll actually go to Google Scholar and look it up and read it further. Legal case summaries also may be notated in the advisory opinions you're reading. So in that case, you don't need to search for another legal case summary. You can use what's in the advisory opinion, and that saves you a lot of time. So here is a sample FOIL appeal for a constructive denial. I wanted you to see kind of like what the setup looks like. This had to be mailed, so you have to, I do fillable FOIL appeal templates on certain things because it's easier to just fill in the information and kind of, send it off. So here, you're just putting the normal stuff, the date, the FOIL appeals officer, could be a board as well, name of agency and the full address. Okay. It's regarding a Freedom of Information law appeal. And then if they provide you a reference number, so some municipalities actually track their FOILs and they might say 25-001. Well, that tells me that I'm the first FOIL requester for the year 2025. You're going to put that reference number in here. Oh, and by the way, when that comes in handy, that code, is when they tell you that they're overwhelmed with foils and they can't get to yours right away. And it comes back that you're the second foiler for the whole year in June, you know? And I'll actually use that to my benefit on appeal. So then the first paragraph is really going to tell them what occurred. It's your what I call statement of facts. And you're going to put all your facts in here. When did you send the foil? Okay. And you might even want to say, I sent it via email. Okay. Or I sent it through online submission. Then when did you receive the acknowledgement and the dates? You want to put the dates, they're important because they address the time limits. Okay. Now, in this case, the acknowledgement said they're 120 business days. That's when we'll get back to you. Okay. I tell you, provide the exact wording from the acknowledgement letter. Don't change their wording. Okay. Leave it as is because that's what they stated. Don't embellish it. And then I tell why I feel this violates New York State FOIL. In my opinion, it violates New York State FOIL time limits imposed on an agency. And I also include all the documentation for their review. It's almost like a courtesy. It's just saying, so you don't have to look up all the stuff. I'm going to include it all, but you're really supposed to. So you want to include all correspondence between you and the FOIL officer, all emails. List them in the above paragraph and attach them when sending in your FOIL appeal. This is the rest of, or another part of the appeal. The first paragraph explains why I'm appealing. It's constructive denial. I just want to give a brief overview. And then I want to give my reasons that support my FOIL appeal. And the first thing I give is the regulations of the Committee on Open Government. And I just give them a statement of a portion of it. I quote it so they know it's not, my words, it's their words. And I also give a source. I give a web link of what page, what website I took it from. You want to go and read the entire regulation, go for it. As far as the agency. But for me, I just want to point out part of the regulation. Okay, I don't want them to think that, this is just something I wrote up and they have no way to verify it. Okay. Now, the next part of the appeal is I put in an advisory opinion. So I went and found an advisory opinion that again supported why they couldn't, why it was unreasonable for 120 days. Okay. And I gave a source, and the source is the actual advisory opinion, but I didn't want to, copy and paste in the whole advisory opinion or attach it. So I just pulled out some of the information. Now I don't know if I put in the full quotes here. Yeah, I did. But I bolded the section that I wanted to stand out, what I wanted them to know. They want to read the rest of it, that's fine. The point is I wanted them to read the section that applied. And then if they want to read the whole opinion, they can. So again, you're just really trying to back up your appeal with either law or regulations, advisory opinions, or legal cases to support you. And then really the rest of it it's just part of a template. And you can just do it the way you would like to do it. But for the most part, I educate them. I tell them how long they have to respond to me, how there's to respond to me, that if the records are denied or redacted on appeal, they have to explain the reasons for the denial, and each redaction fully in writing is required by law. Okay, but if the records are approved, please send them to my attention via email. I want my response email. Don't mail it to me. Okay, then I also tell them that they have to take my appeal and their determination, and that must be sent to the Committee on Open Government. Why? Because they track all this stuff. They track these appeals to see, why are there so many appeals? Can you imagine if you foiled, I don't know, say 70 records in a year from your town and you had to appeal them all? They're going to say, wait a minute, how do we get 70 appeals from this little town? they're going to want to know what's the problem there. Why are there so many appeals? Okay. Then at the bottom, you're just going to reiterate what you stated in your first paragraph and give what documents you're attaching and the date of the document. Okay. And the big thing is make sure that all your copies attached and you have signed your letter before you mail it. I did have one time where I didn't attach my records and I actually got denied because they didn't believe that I actually foiled, that I actually had a FOIL request and a denial. So they denied me because they didn't believe me. That was the last time I made that mistake. I was rushing and I forgot to attach the records. Okay, so now we're gonna go into to see, what it looks like when you not only FOIL an appeal, but what some of the responses look like. So in this case, we're going to address Royal Reynolds' lawsuit versus Jeffrey McCann. And why? Because his Article 78 pro se lawsuit was on FOIL and how he ended up there. Okay. So, but if you'd like to review the entire case by document, you can search as a guest on this website. It is the New York State Court website. You can search as a guest. You can go in, and once you get in, there's little tabs at the top. You can select name, and then you can put in either the petitioner's name, the respondent's name, their attorney's name, and you can pull up their case. But I've also provided a direct web link to the case files. So anyone that is on here tonight, if you wanted to get it from Kim, or you can contact me. My email is 850reeb@gmail.com. I will send you these links so that you can go directly in there and look at any document on this case. Okay, so the first thing is, so in an Article 78 lawsuit in New York State, there's specific records you've got to submit. Now, nearly all the courts allow you to e-file. You can go through New York State Court e-filing system. I believe it's NYSCEF. And the first thing you're going to do is create an account. Okay, but what records do you need after you pay your fee? You have to put all your records in at once. Okay, your initial records. So what do you need? You need a notice of petition. Okay. You'll also need a petition with a verification page, and that verification page requires you to notarize the petition. What is going to be in the petition? The petition is going to include a preliminary statement. The preliminary statement is pretty much saying why you're doing the lawsuit. It'll tell what parties and where the venue that you want, which is usually New York State Supreme Court, and it's got to be in a specific county. You're going to provide statement of facts. That's the beginning part of your appeal, where you bring in, this is what I did. I foiled. Here's the response, and back and forth. Those are your statement of facts. Okay. Anything that occurred. And then you go to your legal arguments. Your legal arguments are what backs up your case. Now, yes, you have stuff from your appeal, but that's going to be party, like an exhibit of your petition. So you want to look at other case laws and you might want to put in the actual law, the regulations. All those would be relevant, but you're going to want to put in some new legal arguments or case law to back yourself and back the statements you're making. The next thing is you also have to do an RGI. This is a request for judicial intervention. And as we learned in doing Article 78s, this is required for pro se. So when a person is doing this on their own, they have no attorney, they're required to do an RJI, and there's a fee for it. Some additional documents you may need are affidavits. Now, affidavits no longer in New York State have to be notarized. You can have them notarized, or they have to be signed under penalty of perjury. So that was a new change that occurred in January 2025, I believe, where affidavits no longer required a notary. The second thing is exhibits and the documents. These are documents as referenced in the petition. So if you addressed your FOIL request, it would become Exhibit A. The acknowledgement, Exhibit B, or you could combine it and said Exhibit E is the FOIL request, the acknowledgement, and all the other documents. But those are pretty much the documents that are needed for an Article 78. And I know there's some people on here who, and I believe if they're still on here, Sue and Royal, they can also clarify later if I was correct or if I missed something here. Okay, so Monroe County FOIL request. Now I say Monroe County, but just so you know, this was against the appeals officer, Jeffrey McCann. But Monroe County was also, I believe, party to the lawsuit. So this was the actual FOIL request that Royal Reynolds put in on October 27, 2024. It's in the lawsuit. Okay, and I just want to go over how his FOIL request was set up. Now, just so you know, he did an online submission form. May I suggest if you do online submission, you take a print screen because that's really your proof of sending it in. Okay, other than their receipt, because if you don't have had first written it up and then just copied and pasted it in, they don't have a true understanding of what you really did. So he had it in Word form, and then he also had it in the online submission. So reasonably, you're going to describe the records you were seeking. He was seeking copies of any all invoice and purchase orders for voting machines, ballot marking device, or any piece of equipment utilized for voting. Okay, you provide a date range of dates. You may want to submit separate FOIL requests for a date range due to volume. He did not. He submitted, we didn't think there'd be a lot, January 1st, 2019 to the date of the FOIL request. Provide a list of anything that should be included in the record. There was nothing else he wanted, so he did not address that. Provide your email for further clarification or where to send the records and where to respond if there's a charge for the records. You can also use it for clarification. A lot of times FOIL officers will contact you if they don't understand what you're requesting or if the volume is too large and they want to pare it down. And then the last two paragraphs inform them of their responsibility when responding, including the time limit. Now, Monroe County acknowledged. Okay, so remember, I'd like to just quick flip back a second. He sent his FOIL in on October 27th, so based on there being no holidays in there and not including weekends, he probably should have got a response around November 4th. But they didn't respond to November 25th. So Roy could have waited the 5 business days and immediately appealed, but he waited. Okay, he wanted the records. He didn't go ahead and appeal. So, in their acknowledgement, there's a request for additional time. There's a valid reason for the additional time. And in their case, they provided a date certain when the records will be sent, December 24, 2024. Okay, and it says, we expect to forward the documents to you by December 24th. That's an approval, by the way. They didn't say an answer. They said the documents. So they had the documents. Okay, then and then they put a reference to the law, the Public Officers Law 89-3A. And again, I'm pointing out the response exceeded the time limit of 5 business days, but he waited and he's already acknowledged. So you can't appeal at this point. The majority of acknowledgments ask for an additional 20 business days and later can request additional time, but must provide a date certain when a response will be provided. This acknowledgement provides a date certain right off the bat, which does not allow for another extension. Because they could have said we need 20 business days and then later gave the date certain. No, we're going to give you the records on December 24th. Well, here we are. And now it says January 22nd. That's when they responded. They didn't respond December 24th. Now they've exceeded the date certain by 16 business days. Now that's not including holidays or weekends. So they extended another 16. Now, had Royal appealed when they failed to acknowledge, he would actually already have the records. Okay? But he didn't. So, anyways, now what do they want? They want to go farther out. They now are giving another date certain of February 20th. What do? Well, you can wait for the agency to respond on February 20th if you want to, or you can send a FOIL appeal for constructive denial based on the time limits imposed by Public Officers Law Article 6 that they violated. You shouldn't have to keep waiting because they didn't provide any new information other than, well, we are not going to have it ready till February 20th. All they did is copy and paste the first one and just change the date. So again, they're kind of hoping you don't know what your rights are. And they can keep extending this as long as you don't know what your rights are. Now, luckily for him, they did not make him wait till that date. On January 28th, they gave him his records. They gave the records existing were approved. That's what they said, the existing records. And the records were sent electronically to his emails he requested, and the FOIL request was closed. Their appeal procedure and contact information for the appeals officer was provided. Great. Because they gave him the records, they didn't deny them, but they still applied putting the appeal information. So there's nothing really wrong with this response. But Roy and others reviewed the records. And after the review of the records provided, they realized that of the purchase orders and invoices they only got one invoice. They got multiple purchase orders, but only one invoice. And that invoice had no prices, meaning a possible redaction of information. And all the purchase orders are dated after the FOIL request was submitted. So he requested these records from a time frame in 2019 to the date of the FOIL request, which was in 2024. But in essence, all the records the purchase orders at least, were all dated in 2025. Now, how could that be if the purchase order was created in 2019? So, he wanted them to certify that these were really copies of official records. He wanted to know if this invoice had been redacted or if any other information had been redacted. So he sent a letter to the FOIL officer asking them to certify. And here's their response. They said, "Good morning. We do not certify records." It's a requirement of the law that they have to do this. It's in the regulations. So this is a refusal to certify to a copy of an official record as required by the New York State Committee on Open Government Regulations, which they must follow. It's very simple. They didn't want to certify that these were actual records. They also said if they marked it on the record, if they redacted on the record the records he received, well, then they were redacted. But if they weren't, well, then check the letter. Well, what would the letter mean if you had already redacted and put the reasoning for the original documents, which they didn't do? So, what's next? Now Royal appeals. Why? I'm missing records. I don't have a complete invoice. There's problems. So I know this is a little hard to read. It's really hard to get. This is actually 2 pages of a FOIL appeal I tried to fit in here and give you some comments. So the first of all, the appeals officer in this case was the County of Monroe Executive Office, Jeffrey McCann. So here, The first paragraph is your statements of fact. This is where you provide the dates and descriptions of all the documents between you and the FOIL officer, also informing that these records are attached. And there's some other descriptions in there of statements you want to make regarding this, such as, let's see. I received records of purchase orders in one invoice. I also requested on February 11th that the records as provided be certified as true copies and asked that there were any redactions of the records provided. So you want to give as much information as possible for them to understand, even though you're attaching the documents. The second paragraph is where you explain why you are appealing. Example, failure to certify, missing records, and redacted records. And I would address them all individually. So the first one was regarding the purchase orders and redaction of delivery dates. It also addressed the missing, the invoice. Actually, it's the next one, the invoice that had only one provided, and the redaction on the number of units that were purchased, the unit pricing, and the total price of units, and a credit that was received. So all the invoice had was the total amount they paid, but didn't give you any of the other particulars. And then, so these paragraphs are really where you address it and where you address like the legal portion of it. Then he also addressed the certification of true copies and the fact that this is a requirement. And he put the quote in there, and he sourced it, and he said New York State FOIL regarding the certification of records, 89.3, the Freedom of Information Law, and he spelled it out for them because they wouldn't certify. And then he pointed out that per the Monroe County purchase order, general terms and conditions, as was attached to each and every purchase order, that they were even violating that. They had specific requirements of what had to be included in the invoice in order to pay it. But they decided, they didn't have to do that. So you never know what's actually in the record itself that you received that would help support you in your appeal. In this case, it was the general terms and conditions from the county that gave it to us, or gave it to him. So the last three paragraphs point out again the time limit of 10 business days, what information would be provided if records are denied or redacted, where to send the records or the response, and who must receive the appeal and the response. Lastly, your signature and the documents attached. So what do you think happens after this appeal? What are they going to say? Well, they didn't say anything. They didn't say one word. They just ignored it, as though Royal never appealed. But Royal sent it certified mail and they signed for it. So he knew when their 10 business days was up. And this is what led to an Article 78 lawsuit pro se. And the term pro se is Latin for oneself or on one's own behalf. And most people don't know that in New York State courts, you have the right to represent yourself in virtually any type of case, whether it's civil, family, housing, small claims, etc. So a typical case in Western New York area might cost between $5,000 and $10,000 with an attorney. In the area around Suffolk, Orange County, you might be starting at $15,000 for an attorney. Now, Royal didn't live in Monroe County. He lived across the state. And it cost him about $500 for his full lawsuit. $500. He represented himself and did a great job at it. So, I'm not going to go through all the particulars of the Article 78 lawsuit. That's something, if you want to take the time and you want to learn more, you'll go and pull up the link and read all the documents. But the result of the Article 78 lawsuit against Monroe County or Jeffrey McCann was that the missing records were provided. They provided all those other invoices that they supposedly didn't have. They stated there were no redacted records and that these were true copies, which was provided through multiple individuals certifying. People in the Board of Elections certified, the FOIL officer certified, the comptroller certified. It was just a sea of certifications. The county informed that they failed to respond to the FOIL appeal. They did that during oral arguments, which Roy, because of his distance and other issues, he was able to do virtually. And then his court costs were awarded. Now, not attorney costs, but they did agree in oral arguments, the respondent, to provide his court costs. That's unheard of. Most FOIL Article 78s, they make you jump through what's called 2 hoops. The first one is you have to win, but to get court costs, you have to substantially win. So you have to jump through another hoop. He didn't have to jump through either hoop. They agreed to pay during oral argument. And but there were other things, other relief sought. So the court didn't require FOIL training or reviewing the FOIL procedure to be compliant with the law. So it didn't make the county do that. And we thought that that was appropriate, considering they had multiple FOIL violations. And then ultimately, we ended up putting a spotlight on the county's FOIL practices as well as their purchasing practices. We exposed them for the errors they were making that could be significant later on. And someone may pull up this lawsuit one day and say, oh, they got caught on this before. We're going to use this lawsuit in our lawsuit. So you never know. So I'm going to start ending this so you can ask any questions, but best practices and recommendations. This doesn't matter if you're doing a FOIL request or you're doing a FOIL appeal. Review the website for the agency's FOIL policy and procedures, or contact the agency to get this. Because if you don't know what their procedures are, you could be foiling the wrong person. And then when you go to appeal, they won't honor it. Or vice versa. There could be a lot of different issues, especially when you get to Article 78. But state agencies are required to have their FOIL policy and regulations on their website. No one else has to, just the state agencies. Make sure the time limits were exceeded prior to appealing. Don't appeal too early, because if you appeal before the time limit has expired, the FOIL appeal officer will deny your appeal as untimely or moot. And then you have to do this all over again. The FOIL appeal is a business transaction. I teach people to be respectful in your wording. These are people on the other end. Well, I hope they are, not AI. And I would want to know that if that was my daughter as the FOIL officer, that my daughter was treated with respect. So I try to treat all FOIL officers with respect. Even if I disagree with them, I'll stand my ground, but I'll be respectful doing it. Create a FOIL request and a FOIL appeal template if you regularly FOIL for records. Oh, it makes your life so easy when all you have to fill in is maybe a date or change it from FOIL officer to records appeals officer, records access officer, and then just describe the records you want. Everything else stays the same. So don't work harder, work smarter. FOIL appeal templates, just so you know, those might be a little more difficult, but a constructive denial is a constructive denial. If you highlighted, you should respond in 5 business days, but you put the whole paragraph in, highlight that bolded part and bold the part you want them to read. Okay, it's really kind of simple. Request a certification letter from the FOIL officer regarding records don't exist. Diligent search for records, true copies of official records. Whether you do it after the FOIL request was denied, or you do it like before the appeal or after the appeal, those things sometimes carry weight, especially because the New York State Committee on Open Government, when you get their advisory opinions, they're legal attorneys, And a FOIL officer has to have access to the records. So a FOIL officer, in denying that they did a diligent search and you can pull up a record, that's not too good for court for them. So both of them, both the certification letter from the FOIL officer and the New York State Committee on Open Government Advisory Opinion, I think are very valuable documents to have, either for an appeal or for an Article 78. In here, and I'm not going to go through all these, but I have provided some recent FOIL lawsuits and the court's decision on them. And this one, Gershio and Gershio, they challenged the denial of FOIL request for an employee's personnel file. The court granted their petition and ordered disclosure of the personnel file and awarded attorney fees and costs, emphasizing that agencies must provide specific justifications for withholding records. Okay, so you never know what little thing they missed that could get you what you need. So I'm just going to show these. If you can go back and read them because you'll have the PowerPoint presentation. But there's a lot of different cases that have, things that you might be interested. Where sometimes even though records are denied, a court may say, but we want to see them. We want to see if you have those records, so produce them. Okay, so finally, I provide resources. These are resources I use, and I've been doing this a long time, so I'm giving you the best resources. New York State Committee on Open Government, best resource out there. Now I just started, I have a new resource, Google Scholar Case Law. Love it. It is a way for me to look up legal cases and read more information on them. And then if I need to, I can also go to, because I'm always looking up New York State court ones, I can actually put the information to the court system and pull up the full docket if it's there, all the documents, depending on how old it is. The other place I go to, it's called the New York State Records Retention and Disposition Schedule. So every government agency, they can't just destroy the records when they want. They have to follow the law. And the New York State Education or the New York State Archives, they're the ones that determine what you can destroy and when you can destroy it. It's a great tool. If you don't know the name of the record you're looking for, you might look up financial records and find what you're looking for, what they call it, and how long they have to keep it. So I found this to be very, very helpful. I had someone one time who said, I foiled for people's oaths of office and I was denied that they were destroyed. Well, they're historical records. They can't be destroyed. What they can destroy is any copies of them, but they can't destroy the actual signed oath. So again, I find this to be a helpful tool. I also utilize the New York State Comptroller's website. Not only do they have a lot of great audits that give me some insight into records that municipalities have to have financially, but they also address ethics and other things, so I can find a lot of things that way, grants and so forth. And they have a lot of manuals and reports. And sometimes their reports cover several counties. They're just very interesting as far as if something is happening in my municipality, I'll start looking it up and I'll find a report. Like I found a report on called Parkland Alienation, and it tells you about what a municipality can do with a park. And you would think, well, they could sell it. No, they can't just sell it. They can't sell it because they have to get state legislature approval to sell it because it's parkland. So you just never know what you're going to find in some of these manuals that might be helpful to what you're searching for. And then, as I told you, search tools. So New York State Corporation Lookup. That's how I'll check to see if a business is registered in the state of New York to do business. Now, could they be somewhere else? Yes. They can be registered in a county. Maybe they're a sole proprietorship. and though I gave you the one for Suffolk County, New York, I actually did a training and left it up there, but each county should have their own website. And I have found other counties that will put up businesses that registered with them. The other place is the New York State Charities Bureau lookup for charitable corporations. So if you're a 501c3 not-for-profit, well, I shouldn't say 501c3. If you're a charitable not-for-profit corporation in the state of New York, and I believe the cutoff is $25,000. So if you raise $25,000 or more, you're required to register with the New York State Charities Bureau. So you might find them there. I didn't have it in here, but you can also go to the IRS, and the IRS will have databases as well. Like 501c3 not-for-profits, they have an entire tax-exempt database on every single 501c3 not-for-profit registered in the US, not just New York. You can choose your state and then see all the ones that are registered. I also use Open Book New York, which I brought up earlier. Open Book New York, it's great information. It's only what's put in there. It's not like, so every municipality, like a school district and county, city, town, and village, all have to file annual financial reports on their previous year closed budget. You can find this in an Open Book New York, but understand it's only what they put in. It's not verified. So it's not like the state comptroller goes through it and tells you this is wrong, or they tells them this is wrong. They don't even look at it, but it's submitted by them for their actuals for the previous year and other valuable information. There's also, oh, I did put in the IRS. Oh, well, this is the IRS filings and other information on nonprofit corporations. So if a not-for-profit corporation makes over a certain dollar threshold, like in their revenue, or I don't know if it's their revenue after expenses or if it's just the revenue, ProPublica will post all their 990 forms. And some of them I have found back into the 1990s, and on some entities that I was asked to research. So this is the actual records they file with the IRS for their taxes, for their tax exemption. The last one is Muck Rock. Now, Muck Rock is a company that will foil your records for a fee. Obviously, I don't need to do that. I know how to foil, but they make all the records they foil for public. So I just want to caution you on two things. One, and I'm not putting them down. I think they're doing a great service for people that don't know how to foil. Okay, but I don't know if I would want to foil my records and have my records and information public. That's me. Okay. The second, and I'm sure like a journalist, if you're doing a story, you don't want someone else to get your information before you get it, or have someone else, be tipped off as well. And the other thing is be very careful. So Muck Rock, when they foil, and I don't know, maybe they've changed their practices. Like I said, I'm not putting them down, but I had someone that came to me asking for help in foiling a particular company. And they told me they used Muck Rock, and both times Muck Rock got a denial and they weren't able to get the records. And it took me all of 30 seconds to find out they were not a foilable company. They were a not-for-profit corporation. And because they didn't receive 90% of more money from a government agency, they were more privately funded, they were not foilable. So, it's kind of live and learn. He was very disappointed, but I actually was able to find a workaround for him through the town to get the records he was looking for without actually foiling that corporation. So sometimes there are workarounds, sometimes there's not. And that's it for my training. I hope everyone learned something, and if not, when you get the information, I'm sure it will be valuable to you as you move forward in foiling records or if you have problems. And then, as Kim knows, I'm always available to anyone who needs help. If you're doing your first FOIL appeal, you want to review or whatever you need help with. So Kim, I'll turn it back over to you if anyone has any questions, and everyone will get also all the web links that were in here. Anything I put in is going to go on a Word document. It'll go to Kim, and she can send it out to everyone so that when you get it, all you have to do is click on the link and go right to the website instead of writing everything down and like, oh my God, how am I going to type all that into the web link? You'll get an automatic direct link.
Does anybody have any questions? Anything like that? I don't know if Roy or wants to jump in and say something briefly.
Okay, sure. Just want to say that when Anne-Marie referred to me as doing this and me doing that, it was a team effort. So it was us following the lawsuit. So I appreciate that. That's it.
Yeah, we had a team helping, that's for sure. But you still were the person who had to do all the actual filing and the actual talking, and it was your name on it. But we did put together a team to kind of help support and help do it, and everything from editing, which is basically what I did, to actual research. So I don't know if Sue's still on the call. She has done some foils and is doing a pro se lawsuit. I don't know if she wants to jump in on anything. Not obligated. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to say something if you wanted to.
Maybe she's not there.
No, she's there. That's fine. I'm not, just wanted to give her a chance. Any questions? Going, gone, last chance. Okay,
And
well,
and it would be great too if anyone finds something that I had incorrect on my presentation. Let me know. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I do all my own research and put it all together myself. In fact, these were two separate presentations put together as one. And then I went back and researched everything to put in like the public officers law information. I know some people had asked for that. I tried to do the best I could on that. But you know, even after I finished it, I went and readdressed it, reread it like 3, 4 times and kept changing things. I kind of felt like I became Kim, and here is my report. And oh my God, my report started at 10 pages and I'm at 42 now, So I actually, when I was doing it, I was like, I have become Kim. But
it's very
I
true.
don't get the benefit of it, of the information and it being more accurate. So, but like I know different people on here, like Stephen, I would love to hear if he thought I did anything wrong or misstated something, because you learn from this stuff, and I always learn from information from the groups I train. I always learn something new that I didn't know. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay. I'm not perfect. I've had a lot of years experience doing
Well,
it,
we really
but
appreciate it. We
Yeah.
really
yeah,
appreciate you bringing that to light. And it's for posterity. We now have a recording of the event, of all the process, and we could look back at it, and it'll be on the website, and we could refer to it. So I really appreciate it.
Can I just want to say on the call right now, Anne-Marie and I were talking about, I guess it's not really FOIL, it's more open meetings law related. But one of the issues we're seeing is something really simple, that none of the Board of Elections in 62 counties, from what I can tell, has any information about the minutes from their meetings on their website. And it doesn't appear any information about meetings, like when upcoming meetings is happening, or even notice. The little bit of notice that I could find for Erie County anyways was like the day before a meeting, which isn't enough time. So we're looking for, what do we think? Maybe 6 people or so, a couple of people to kind of work on not a hard project at all, just to split up the 62 counties of New York and look at the website. Maybe you have to make a phone call to see if it's, if you can't find it, to see if it's there and see what they say. And then possibly use the FOIL process to, I think we thought minutes, right? To get minutes of
yeah,
the meeting. Yeah.
yeah.
And
So the minutes are required to be posted online within 2 weeks after a meeting.
Right.
And they all have websites, so there's no excuse, but they don't, we can't say all 62 counties, but we already know.
A good
Erie
chunk
does
of them
not
don't.
have them, Suffolk
Yeah.
does not have them, Niagara County doesn't have them. The majority of counties do not have them. In fact, we have not found a county that has minutes.
Oh my
And
goodness, that's so odd. You know why? I'm going to tell you a story real quick, Anne Marie.
sure,
When I first got involved in election integrity in like 2021, at night, like when my kids were quiet and everything, I would go on boards of election, and I would read the minutes of their meetings, and they were on the websites. And then I noticed, like I think it was like last year, a year and a half ago, like it might even have been around COVID, that I was not able to find the minutes. You know, it might have been, I think it was last year. All of a sudden, they changed the website, and it was really difficult to find because I used to be able to just put a keyword in, say, Smartmatic or something, and I would get the minutes for anything to do with those keywords, and it changed. So that would be very interesting project.
So it wouldn't be that it's not a hard project, but it would actually just do a tremendous amount in terms of transparency, I believe, to have minutes so people can go see what's happening at the Board of Election and know when the meetings are so that you could go to them, would go a long way. So the idea is to put together a report. And if you want to learn a little bit more about FOIL, it's an easy way to do it because foiling for minutes shouldn't be an issue at all. They're supposed to be keeping them. And so, it would be an easy way to start. And Anne Marie, would be involved, project managing it or help managing it. So we're looking for, I think probably about what, a half a dozen more if we can get it, but just to start that. And the idea would just be divide up the state and, you can do your area. So if anybody's interested in jumping on at that, we'll put a note in the next newsletter, and we'll also put something on some of the chats to see if we can get a couple people willing to help with that. And it would go a long way. And then we can see where the report leads and what's next after that. But that would definitely be part of transparency and very, very simple. And it makes no sense while they're not doing it. So.
yeah.
Wanted to
And it's something that what I thought would be good is to do you guys could do some smaller projects that would catch the eye of newspapers and start building your presence in the area of what you do. But open government, when I was with the New York Coalition for Open Government, and I was their project coordinator, and we started doing projects that involved all the regions. So in other words, it wasn't, 10 towns in, 3 counties. We did 933 towns in all the counties in New York State, all the towns. And what we found was we had more hits on media than any other organization. At one point, we were the only ones getting hits. We were really getting a lot of news coverage, both like TV news coverage, paper news coverage, radio, because we were doing things about their area. They don't all want to hear about Buffalo or Syracuse or Albany. They want to know about their municipalities. And this woke people up, and also too that, like I had said at your one meeting, putting out a graphics on in your report, they use those graphics as their headliner. We made so many front page newspapers because they liked the graphic we had, and then wasn't always their story was always accurate or whatever, but the fact is we hit the press.
Yeah.
And anytime something happened or any report we released or we went to Albany to lobby, they all wanted to be there. They all wanted to film us. They were very interested because what do newspapers do? Foil for records. What
That
are they
reminds,
interested in? Open government. This is
Yeah.
what they talk about. They talk about politics. What happened at this meeting or whatever. Well, how do you do that if you don't even know the meeting took place?
Yep. I
Well,
think it's a worthwhile thing, and it basically is an extension of kind of some of the work you already did, but targeted to election integrity and what we, and it's not controversial, right? I mean, if you're having a meeting, you're supposed to have minutes, and those minutes are supposed to be on the webpage, and that's an easy thing for transparency. And I don't think it's not controversial. So anyways, if you're on the call, it's something you're interested in helping with, jump in and let us know. You can email me at info@projectcivica.org or message me, put a note in the chat now if you want. And we'll try to collect a few people to get it started. So, and the other things I wanted to just briefly say is we have a couple upcoming events. If you're interested in going to Lobby Day up in Albany on February 4th, and you're going to stay overnight, the special rate is only good until the 27th. So we kind of need to know that. We will have training and material for you so you can understand what you're advocating for and advocating against. And then also on the 31st of January, we are having basically it's a dancercise or a Zumba type activity, something fun. I think all of us are, kind of feeling the weight of the world right now with everything going on. This is lighthearted, patriotic, fun music for 2 hours. It's a fundraiser. But basically, if anybody goes to any exercise classes, this is not an unusual fee right now for an exercise class that you pay for. So it's $30 for about 2 hours worth of exercise. They'll warm you up, cool you down, give you instruction. It's all on Zoom. It's all virtual, so you can do it in your living room. You can invite your friends over if you want. We'll give you a link just before, probably, I don't know exactly if it'll be 24 hours or a day before or exactly when, but we will give you a link just before for you to join in. And you just need comfortable clothes, a pair of sneakers, water, basically. So jump on board. It would be really fun if we actually had people in every state. So that would be kind of a fun thing to do. And, let's just kind of start the year out exercising, get rid of the winter blues, and enjoy some patriotic moments together with people from across the state and across the country. So we have signups on that on the website as well. That's at projectcivica.org. And then lastly, we have a precinct strategy kickoff meeting. Is that February 9th, Patrick? Do I have the right date?
Yep, February 9th.
February 9th, that's another on Zoom event. Although if you live in Long Island, you can go in person to the warehouse. And again, we're just trying to educate on precinct strategy, how you can represent your neighborhood and represent their issues with your local political party. And this year, upstate New York is carrying petitions to be a committee person. And we're trying to just encourage people to participate. So that's coming up on the Monday, the 9th. So 9th, 8th, I'm getting myself confused again.
9.
February 9th, Monday.
Okay. Sorry, Monday. Yes. So those are the 3 big events that we've got coming up. And so please jump in and join that. So thank you, Erin Marie, for coming tonight and teaching us on freedom of information law. That recording will be available for anybody that wants to learn and review it down the road. So, we'll have that recording for people too as well. So it's already 9:24, 9:25. It just clicked. I thank everybody for coming tonight. Next week, we have David DiPietro. He is an assemblyman from Western New York. He is going to talk about the legislative process, like how a bill becomes a law. What's supposed to happen, and then after that he's going to give his take on how things, what really is happening from his point of view. So that should be super interesting, and we hope we get a big crowd on for that next week on Thursday, and again on Zoom. So good night, everybody, and have a good evening, and thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Anne Marie, so much.
You're welcome.
Let's see, how do I stop the recording and the
The live stream.
stop the live stream?